everybody. Welcome back to the Doormat Mom No More podcast. I am Doormat Mom, where we talk about everything that has to do with parent-child or family estrangement. It's been a very busy week in the news. Unfortunately, Savannah Guthrie is still looking for her mom. Prayers. What a terrible, terrible situation happening there, right? My gosh. Again, prayers. I have today a psychotherapist. Her name is Abby Rodman. And I came across her material on TikTok, and she talks a lot about narcissistic abuse and how that impacts. And what really struck me is one particular video where she explains the story about a former client. And now that former client actually died from narcissistic abuse. So I'm going to bring that video on first, and then I'm going to invite her on to talk a little bit about that video, what narcissistic abuse, could look like. And we're just going to let it evolve after that. Okay. All right. So let me bring on the video, and okay. And I'm going to go over to it here. And here we go. And let's probably get that.
About him in December, I think December 14th, if you want to go back and look at it. I'm a psychotherapist of decades, and I have a specialty in narcissistic abuse. And I don't know why I didn't say in that video that he had died. I think I had to sit on it and think about it a little bit. By the time he died, he was no longer my client, but I did hear through the grapevine that he had contracted a very bizarre illness that killed him within a few weeks. I do know during the time that we worked together, he was struggling mightily with fear of his wife. She was a malignant narcissist. And even though he could have physically overpowered her with both hands tied behind his back, that didn't matter. The fear for him was really real. And this is true for a lot of victims of narcissists. Narcissistic abuse heals, masquerading that word so this video doesn't get shadow banned. Narcissistic abuse heals. We already know that narcissistic abuse can make people really physically unwell, but it can also be worse than that. I wish I could say that this is the first client or person that I know personally or professionally who has died from narcissistic abuse. He is not. And as a society, we need to wake up to these relationships and the damage that they do. And whether you are a divorce attorney, a police officer, a GAL, a PC, a judge in family court, and especially if you are a therapist, you need to be aware that these relationships are just not normal relationships that just didn't work out, or that the people who are victimized are either naive or weak, because they're neither, or that the people who choose to be in a relationship with a narcissist are somehow broken or their pickers are broken. That's just not the case. Narcissistic abuse heals. My client was healthy and strong and fit, and a bizarre illness took him before the best doctors in the country could do anything to help him. If you are a therapist, you need to know more about narcissistic abuse. If you are the friend of someone, if you are someone who is in an abusive relationship, please find out more about narcissistic abuse, because it could mean your life. The cruelest part of all of this is that narcissists really never have to raise a hand to their victims. The cruelty of their psychological abuse is enough to kill their victims by making them that physically sick, or that the victims just take care of it themselves because they can no longer tolerate the treatment. As a society, we need to wake up, because we can't lose any more good people to the cruelty of narcissism, while the narcissists roam free, just looking for their next victim. My client died of narcissistic abuse.
So, and when I heard that video, it reflected on so many parents in my group, Doormat Mom No More, strange parents that are becoming physically ill from the estrangement that they're going through, but also the treatment that led up to the estrangement, and how they're dealing with the reality that potentially their lives could be shortened by 15 years because of this type of suffering. And so it made me like want to bring her on and talk about, first off, educate us on what, explain in her terms what our narcissistic abuse looks like, what it is, and whatnot. So let's do that now, and have her do her thing. Hi, Abby. How are you?
Laura, how are you? It's
Good.
so nice to meet you in person finally.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. We've been going back and forth. Look, that video is so strong. And I mean, it floored me, and it made me think in so many different directions about the abuse. And you said so many different things in it, including, if you're an attorney, a GAL, a myriad, all those things. So it applies in so many different ways. And I say it applies to estranged parents who have been through some narcissistic abuse and ended up being on the other end of estrangement. Not to say that there aren't some estranged kids whose parents weren't narcissistically abusive to them. I think it can go both ways. But the bottom line is the impact and how detrimental it is to a person's mental health. So, give me a little bit of background on you, how you started like really just honing in on this topic, and then explain a little bit more about narcissistic abuse and what to look for and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, I just rewatched that video with you along with your viewers, and it's painful to watch. And I want to be clear that that video was heavily redacted in a sense to protect the identity of the person that I was talking about. So just want to say that off the bat. I don't get online and openly talk about clients and that kind of thing. So just putting that out there. But yes, it was a horribly painful and sad story, and something, as I said in the video, I have seen more than once. And I became interested. I've always been interested in personality disorders. I've been a psychotherapist for decades. I grew up with two personality disordered parents, which I don't talk about a lot, but probably will as I continue on. And then I found myself married in midlife to a malignant narcissist. And once that marriage ended in such a colossally explosive way, I was like, you know what? If this can happen to me, this can happen to anyone. And then I was kind of interested in the whole topic, and then it's become a specialty for me now. But narcissistic abuse is rampant, and the numbers vary, but there are millions of narcissists undiagnosed roaming our planet. And if you think about that, each narcissist probably affects, let's say, 10 people in their lives, between romantic relationships, marriages, children, parents, whomever. Wow. You've got a lot of people wounded by narcissistic abuse. And what it does to your health and your mental health cannot be overstated. People get sick in these relationships. That is well documented. And I just am trying to bring awareness to that, because I think a lot of people, whether you're a victim, and I use that word openly and really comfortably, because we are victimized, we are targeted, even though we don't know we are, but we are. And people may not even know they're in these relationships, but they don't know what's happening to them.
That's the key. That's what I want you to explain, because I don't think people realize. And I think it's just, they get broken down. So, it becomes like you become broken down over time, where at the end you are broken, and you just, you don't even realize how broken you are. So explain if someone was to try to identify it in their own lives, what would they be looking for? What would they?
Well, there's certain stages that a narcissistic relationship will follow. And I think a lot of people are, understand love bombing that happens at the beginning of the relationship. And then eventually the discard, the abuse that goes on, in the interim of the relationship, and then the discard or reverse discard that happens. When you are in it, you slowly start to lose yourself. And I saw a video once, and I've talked about this, where the creator said, if you're in a narcissistic relationship, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave? And the creator said, because there is no you. There's no you left once you're in a relationship like this. And these people who are narcissists, now we all have narcissistic qualities. Let me say that. The numbers show that a small percentage of people are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but that's because most narcissists don't go and get diagnosed. So and people will say, I don't know, maybe you see this too, stop using the word narcissist, you're watering it down, you're using it too casually. No, I'm not. And I refuse to stop using the word narcissist because I believe that it is everywhere and that millions and millions of people are suffering at the hands of these dysregulated, personality disordered people. In a relationship with a narcissist, there's a sea change that tends to happen. So you're love bombed by the person at the beginning of the relationship. Now we're talking about a romantic relationship now.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the direction, but this is
we can go with it, and we can always extrapolate.
Right. So you're love bombed at the beginning. You're their soulmate. You're their twin flame. You're everything they've ever dreamed of. Every other partner has been bad and awful and terrible. And you're the love of their life. And it is so easy to get swept up in that. It is so it feels heavenly when you're being targeted because you're longing for these things. You're not stupid. You're not naive. You're not, a pushover. You're longing for these things in your lives. And narcissists target you very carefully. They will look for people who are hungry for those things. Right. Maybe you've just gotten out of another relationship. Maybe you've just gotten divorced. Maybe you've been lonely a long time. The narcissist will glom on to you when they see that you are a potential victim for them. They need supply. They need someone telling them all the time how great they are, how wonderful they are, because they don't have any sense of self. There's no self in them. And so they are constantly looking for external validation. But eventually, I'm going to go off on a tangent for 1 minute and then we'll come back to it. So basically, narcissists target the most wonderful people. And I stand by that. I will die on that hill. Loving, kind, intelligent, affectionate, giving, warm, empathic. They are drawn to people like that because they know that they lack those qualities. Mm-hmm. And they think, if I connect myself with this kind of person, I can then get those qualities. I can get those qualities imbued into me. I can also be that. Then what happens is they get into the relationship with you and they realize that nothing has changed for them. They're still lying. They're still cheating. They're still deviant. They're still doing all the things they've always done. And then they're like, well, this person has let me down because I was supposed to become like them. I was supposed to be like them. And then they turn on you once they realize that you're not going to be the savior who changes them. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So they're almost like the sucker fish. They're like sucking, right? And it made me just think of something. You know what? I'm thinking about this now. I'm extrapolating it out to the estranged parent, right? And I just wonder, because there is such so many new studies are saying these kids are they're empty inside. They're not filled inside. They're, you know, they've never had that attachment, so per se, that really had filled them, right? Because of the way our society is set up. Dr. Gaber Mate just put that whole video out where the society has been set up where they're not allowed, almost because of the way we're functioning, to fully attach to their parents. They're taken away. They're outsourced to school. They're outsourced in daycare. And so they have that emptiness inside. And I wonder if there's not almost like not a secondary type of narcissism, which is what you're seeing all over, where they're now trying to feed from parents and get whatever it is that's filling, because they have that emptiness. And, you know, as they get older, they're feeding from their parents, and the parents can't fix them because they're already set in that thing. And now, you know, that secondary, now becomes the first influence, peers and environment. They're already empty, and then they're taking it from there. And that's, you know, so you're getting a perpetuation of like trending narcissism. I don't know if what do you think about that? Do you get it? Do you understand where I'm going with that?
That somehow the estranged child is disappointed that they can't be filled up by the parent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that in estrangement situations, anything is possible. Mm-hmm. I've seen it for so many reasons that it's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
But if someone is, okay, so narcissism, many believe that there is a genetic component to it.
Yeah.
My kind of, I don't know if it's a funny way to describe it, but it's like that narcissism or narcissistic personality is kind of like a hibernating bear, right? And if you poke the bear, that bear is going to come out in full force.
Right.
If that bear isn't poked, or that bear is left alone, that sometimes someone won't become a narcissist. You know, that there are triggers, there are environmental triggers, there are family triggers, there are, you know, abuse, neglect, right, abandonment, all these things that happen early on in life that can contribute to the development of the personality disorder.
Okay.
But is it possible that an estranged child is a narcissist who is angry at a parent that they believe just didn't fill them up in the way that they needed to be filled up, and so they had to discard that parent? Absolutely. No question.
It's interesting. That's interesting how you just explained that. Wow. Thank you for that, because I agree with that too. I think there is. And I think that, you know, I think I agree with you too. I think narcissism is much larger in society than what we're saying, what we're seeing. I mean, I know at the traditional level, it's a small percentage, but we're not living in traditional times.
No. And I think I'm grateful for social media, because I think it has given, you know, it's given us the opportunity to learn so many things, but it's also exposed narcissism on a much, you know, broader and worldwide level. And people come out of the woodwork and say, oh my gosh, this is what I've been living in for 20 years, or this is, you know, this is who my mother was, or my father, or my sibling, or my child, or, you know, and it's eye-opening for a lot of people to realize, oh my gosh, this is what I've been experiencing for so long.
Do you think that it's ever, for someone who's truly a narcissist, do you think a woman or a man could have an actual relationship with them at some point? Do they ever, like, is it possible
for them to recover?
Well, yeah, from one, to recover, and two, can you have a relationship with
I think like that? You can have a relationship with a narcissist, but, you know, first I would question why one might want to. But let's just assume that for the sake of family or peace or whatever it is, you need a lot of boundaries in place. Narcissists are largely untreatable. It's a personality disorder. Their brains are scanning differently than the normative brain. We know all of this.
Right.
So a person who doesn't see you as anything but an object is not going to be suddenly imbued with, oh, now I get it. Now I get that this person isn't just an object to fulfill my needs. They are, and they're also they have no interest in responsibility, no interest in accountability. They reject those things. They run from those things. And in many cases, when a narcissist's behaviors get really bad and really egregious, they will run from a relationship because they do not want to be held accountable for their behaviors. So is it possible? It's possible. Like, let's just assume maybe you want to have a relationship with a narcissistic child just for the sake of family or peace. You would have to have a lot of boundaries in place, and you would have to accept that this person is highly limited in their ability to connect, in their ability to love, in their ability to have empathy, if at all. Many of them are not capable of any of those things. So do people stay in different relationships with narcissists? Yeah, they do, but they're not going to be satisfying.
Right. I think, to that point too, with regards to the narcissistic child, one of the things that would be really important to also accept is that hope of changing them. You've got to give up that hope. They are, in order for you to find peace in that situation, you have to give up that hope, because that hope will only compel you to constantly try to, use your efforts, that you're doing to okay, at some point they're going to change. No, you just have to accept them as there is. No, if you want to have a relationship with them, you just have to accept them as there is. They are. If they change on their own, if life changes them to a certain degree because of experiences and what have you, that's how they learn. Because people don't really learn in situations like that. People don't really learn. Like, we can talk to someone blue in the face. Unless they want to learn, they're not going to adopt. So usually it's really just the person has to go out and internalize the learning. They have to internalize the lesson themselves. And that's when people really decide to learn and change. That's why I don't understand why so many, I don't think that strange parents, doing these social media videos are really, if they're doing them, because they want to raise awareness to help each other, comfort each other, cope, that's one thing. But if they're doing it because they think that they're going to compel a strange child to change, that's not going to happen. The child has to choose to change they have to choose. That experience has to cause that. Experience has to cause that. So those are just wasted words if that's what you're doing. But I think that definitely narcissism, dealing with a narcissist, you're very right in the sense that they don't want to face themselves, and they'll do whatever they can not to face themselves. And in fact, there's a great attorney, Carl Knickerbocker, and he coaches about how to deal with a narcissist in court. And the one thing the narcissist will never do is if you got that narcissist an actual proof that's indisputable, you can't dispute it. All right, or it'd be financial or what have you. If he can't dispute it, that's what's going to stop him in his tracks. Like, if it's on, he can't lie his way out, he can't do that. That's going to stop him, right? Because they don't want to be exposed.
But even then, they're known to deny what's in black and white. I mean, it's really, if it weren't so painful to the victims, it's absolutely clinically fascinating what their brains allow them to do. And this is why I find it to be one of the most compelling and fascinating, fields of psychology and psychiatry, because it's truly confounding to the normative brain what these people are capable of.
It's absolutely crazy. So you said that, you know, they love bomb you. So if you're going into a relationship where you're attracted to someone and they start showing the love bonding, you know, love bombing, what else? The love bombing, what do they do?
Well, the love bombing will also be sprinkled with tests. The narcissist likes to test to make sure they're not wasting their time. So if they're love bombing you, it's flowers, it's dinners, it's words, it's you know, it's favors, it's whatever it is. They're just like piling it on, and you're loving it because it feels so good. But then one day they're supposed to show up at your mother's birthday party and they can't make it. And there's no real excuse as to why they can't make it. They just can't make it. So suddenly you're kind of stopped in your tracks, because the narcissist wants to test you to see if you're going to be willing to tolerate their bad behaviors. So in the midst of all this love bombing, and your body is flooded now, right, with hormones and feel good stuff, right? And they stop you in your tracks by pulling a fast one. And it can be something so subtle, but it pulls you up short, but you don't want to look at it because you don't want to give up all that feel good stuff. So now the narcissist knows they've got you because you're willing to, oh, well, he couldn't come to the birthday party because, you know, whatever, no reason. And it's in the midst of this campaign to ensnare you.
Right.
And this is where I so strongly encourage people to pay attention to those moments. And I talk about my own experience on my TikTok and other people's experiences where these kind of micro challenges, these micro aggressions that they will sprinkle into the love bombing, we cannot turn away from them, because if we do, we're cooked. And it's a very, very, it's a very, very complex dance that you enter into. And, you know, the people who are victimized or have been victimized are also, they're complicit because they want so badly to believe who the narcissist is showing up as at the beginning. And so,
I mean, it's no different than a parent, right, who refuses to see their child for who the child is. You want to believe that you know, the child is, this is not what the child's doing. The child is really this. And so, and you keep saying, oh, you know, you make it, they'll grow out of it. This is just a stage, and that, you know, and or no, it's just like you just turn a blind eye. But then deep down inside, we know what we know, and we're just not recognizing it. And it's the same thing what you're describing.
I don't know if you've seen a story recently, and I don't know the details. Anybody can look it up, about these 4 teenagers who tortured and killed a dog. If those parents are not looking at their children with a new lens, we're as a society, we're finished. And I think this is what you're talking about. If you're not willing to look at your child for who they are in a situation like that, or any other situation, then no one is going to be served here.
Because I find that most people that go through this, and most parents that go through this, somewhere inside, like whether or not they want to admit it, and some do admit it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm confirmed in this thinking. You knew all along. You knew all along. You just didn't look at it. You didn't want to accept it. So you just didn't really look at it. You tried to work through it without even admitting it to yourself. And, you know, work it out of them, or give, you know, the benefit of the doubt, or call it something else. Most parents knew all along that this was coming down the line in some way, shape, or form. And some even say that they knew from the moment, you know, that the child was like a toddler or something. They feel it. So what that is, I don't know.
Well, I think that that's your intuition.
Yeah.
And, we, as a society and as we are socialized, we're taught not to pay attention to our intuition.
Yeah.
And I think intuition is our gift. It's our savior. It's our armor, but we push it aside. We don't want to believe that about our partner, our child, our parent. If you ask any victim of a narcissist, they will say exactly, if they're honest with themselves, what you're saying. I knew this so early on, and I pushed it all out of the way because I didn't want it to be true.
Right.
And that is one of the, and that is the part where we do have to take personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I knew my narcopathic husband was an addict. I knew that he was inappropriate with other women. I knew all these things on different levels that we won't get into, but I knew it. I knew it. And so many millions of others are in the same boat.
Right.
People are, and I respect what you're doing. And any creator who's doing kind of the things that we're doing, it's not easy to get on social media and talk about, oh my gosh, look at what's happened to my life. Look at the mistakes that I made. Look at the things that I missed, that I overlooked, but I feel like unless we do this, we're not helping the people who need to be helped. I believe that.
I agree. And that's, I respect you immensely too. I also think that, with regard to that, I knew it. One of the things you get on the other side of that, when you finally say, God, I knew it, I should have listened to myself, is once you admit that you did know it and you didn't listen to yourself, the next time it wakes you up to listen to yourself. You're more apt to listen to yourself the next time some situation that smells or whatnot is similar. You now know, you know what, you got to trust that. And I was talking to someone yesterday over lunch. It's like the amount of hate that people get, you and I, many others, for saying something that is challenging society, and upsets the apple cart for people, is hard. It's not like it's not easy every day to open up your apps and look at and then they get more vicious. I mean, mine has escalated to such a viciousness that it's like people warn me, like, don't read your comments.
No.
And certainly sometimes I do, because I do want to see what's going on and how, but I get some wonderful messages from really wonderful people. But that hatred also tells me that we're sort of over the target. And we're just disrupting, and that's okay. How do you ever change anything if you don't disrupt it, right?
I also feel like no matter our professional background, many of the things that you and I talk about on social media are not understandable. If my dog starts barking, I apologize. Unless we've lived them.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing to be, a mental health clinician and get on and talk about whatever.
Right.
And many people have, a lot of education to offer, but I think that bringing to the table, hey, this happened to me.
Right.
This was my personal experience is invaluable, because otherwise it's you're just reading out of a textbook, basically.
Right. And the nuance of those feelings that get, involved in that conversation, if you've gone through it, that speaks volumes too, whether or not people realize, that's coming through as well. There's nothing that can replace real life experience, and so I think that's another aspect of learning that, people can take from and whatnot. And and look, learning, studying and going to school and whatnot, that has its place too.
Mhm.
I think it's the combination of it all that really makes, these issues understandable, and helps you to connect to, let's say, that poor gentleman that, that lost his life, it's that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But that's what people can be reduced to.
Yeah. And the stress that it places on your nervous system. We know the correlation between stress and physical illness. I've heard, many stories over the years of people taking their own lives and leaving their families kind of scratching their heads. I no longer scratch my head when I hear those stories, especially when there's kind of no other indicator that the person had any reason to take their life. I would immediately look at what were the primary relationships like. I think that video has gotten almost 1 million views, the one that you played, and I think that says something. It's resonated. I mean, if 1 million people viewed it, then
Yeah. They're feeling it, and they probably have some experience with it for sure. And look, I know that the percentage of estranged parents that have considered suicide is 30% who have admitted to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's much higher because it's just such a painful, you can't, and you really, unless you're living it,
Yes.
You can not truly understand what it's like because there's so many prongs to it. It's just, God, if everybody could just sustain that pain for a day, everybody would understand what are these people going through? And then maybe everybody would have more compassion and grace and whatnot. I think that's where grace comes in, right? Because when you don't experience something, but you can at least understand that that's where you give grace for it. But yeah, I mean, between, potentially, considering suicide or getting sick, it's a huge other thing from constant stress, constantly living in a period of stress, or in sadness, or, I hear so many people, who are going through this, I've lost my smile. I've said it myself at times. I've lost my smile. You don't even know. And how do you get back there?
Mm-hmm. And I think your point of grace is, and I talk about it a lot. I feel like I do on my page, of giving yourself grace, of giving yourself the grace to understand that if you have been involved with a person who's a narcissist, you are not to blame. You are not to blame. The only responsibility we have is to educate ourselves and to have an awareness that we didn't have before, and to understand that, especially but I think in all narcissistic relationships, but especially in the romantic ones, you just wanted to love. You just wanted to have the dream. And same with parenting, right? I mean, parenting comes with dreams. Parenting comes with, we're going to raise our kids and then this is what it's going to be like. And, all relationships come with these kind of tacked on expectations. Right. And so you have to give yourself the grace of forgiving yourself for either tolerating abuse, for not wanting to see what was right in front of you, for not, not asking yourself the harder questions when you should have, not trusting your gut or your intuition, because beating yourself up, and I'm all for personal accountability, all for it. Yeah. But beating yourself up because you were in a relationship with a disordered person, right? How is that going to serve you? It's never going to serve you. You have to give yourself grace. You have to, you must.
I think it's really hard to do, but I think you're right. And I think because you know, especially when you're a parent, you want to get it all right because you're forming this little body and this little person, and you think that everything ends up being your fault when so much of it, even though you should take accountability for the mistakes that you made, and you know, and don't worry about saying, you know, if you're sorry, if you're saying you need to say sorry, say sorry. There's no, that's only gonna help. But I think parents sometimes find a hard time to take accountability because they don't want to admit to themselves that they might have failed their child in not completely, but in a particular instance. And that's always hard for a parent to accept that maybe they didn't handle this correctly, or maybe they couldn't, you know. And so I think that's one thing. But two, I know myself that I would never want to be the type of person that doesn't love fully and completely. Like, I wouldn't want what, you know, just my experience of being estranged to stunt me from ever, you know, fully loving anyone, whether another child or whether fully or completely. I just have to be, and this is what we have, more discerning with that.
It's a tough bridge, right? Because you don't want to give up the person you are. You don't want to stop believing in love and healing and connection. But when you've been hurt, when you've been duped, when you've been ruined emotionally, in a sense, by someone, very hard to cross over that bridge into trusting yourself again.
It does. Yeah. And I definitely see that in relationships with a narcissist. It's very hard because you lose your footing. And then you say to yourself, I don't even know, like I thought one thing, it ended up being completely different, and someone else can fool me again, you know, that might be just a little better. So so it takes a while, you know, to come back from it. If in fact you're in that situation, I've seen plenty of women do that. They're like, they just won't go in another relationship because they're just saying, absolutely not going to do that again.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a very scary, you know, and for many reasons, people who attract narcissists will continue to attract narcissists.
That's
and
yeah.
So it's a very, you know, unless you really get straight with who you are and who you attract and why you attract them, and then of course honing in on their, you know, disordered behaviors, right, you may just end up in the same place. And they can show up very differently.
Right.
You know, narcissists can show up very, very differently. They can be covert, they can be overt, they can be, you know, I mean, there's not just a one size fits all. They all follow the same script ultimately, but there's not a one size fits all for how they show up. And so you may have been partnered with an overt narcissist, the Wolf of Wall Street type narcissist,
right?
What we think of, or the Gordon Gekko in my generation, the Wall Street. But, you know, you may have been partnered with that. And then now suddenly you're faced with this like loving, warm, love of my life kind of person. And you're like, well, they're not a narcissist because they don't behave the way that other person did. But yet you'll find out quickly that they are.
Well, you know, it reminds me too, like some of the other cluster B personality disorders, right? So like borderline, you can have this set of traits, and like, okay, you're borderline, and then you have a completely other borderline with this set of traits, and they're both borderline, but they look different. You know? So it's like, and I think that's part of the problem, you know, when we're talking about it for raising kids, and a lot of parents, they don't go into raising kids understanding these cluster B personalities, or they don't understand. So they're raising their kids and they're saying like everything that would work with a normal kid is not what will work with a these kids. And you're doing it's like, oh my God, what is happening? You really get thrown into this situation where like, what the hell is happening? And so everybody's spinning out of control.
And you can add to that, mental health clinicians who work with children and adolescents will not diagnose. I mean, except in extremely rare circumstances, will not diagnose before 18 or 21. And at that point, the kid is out of the house, right? And they're not saying to you at 12 years, I mean, again, except for very rare circumstances,
right.
Your kid is, has antisocial personality. Your kid's a psychopath. They're not telling you that when your kid is 12. And for good reason, for very, very good reason. But yet when you're the parent, you're like, I know something's wrong here. I know something's really wrong here, but no one is going to back me up with a diagnosis because my kid is too young.
Right.
And
yeah, they don't want to put that stigma on. They don't know what it's going to impact in the future as far as, and then, you said, like, once they're 18, yeah, they will. But then you have no, it's done. As a parent, you have no real recourse. The child has got to figure it out for themselves. So it's really handcuffing, the situation. And it's sad that is the case, but, that is the case. So, oh my gosh. So Abby, what are your last thoughts on this before I let you go?
I'm so delighted that I get to meet you in person and not just on an app.
Me too.
But I think that I would encourage anybody who, first, I'd like to recommend a book that I think is wonderful for anybody who wants to learn more about narcissism. And that is Debbie Mirza's book. Okay. And her last name is spelled Mirza. And her book is The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist. And it is, in my estimation, a groundbreaking work on narcissism that has gotten attention, but in my mind, not enough attention. Because if you are questioning whether you may be in relationship with a narcissist of any stripe, this book will make your hair stand on end if that's, And so I do want to recommend that book to anyone. Wish I had written it.
Say it again. What's the title? Say it again. I got the
Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist.
Okay.
And Debbie is wonderful. She's absolutely wonderful. And really is like an expert on the topic, but also talks about it in a way that's so informative and helpful. And gentle.
Yeah.
And
I'll put the link in the below so this way everybody can get it. Okay.
But I do think what's really important is if you think that you are in relationship with a narcissist of any stripe and you want to figure out what's happening to you, figure out why your life has become this cluster, and you decide to go to therapy, you must find a therapist who is versed in personality disorders. You must do this. And you can do this by searching for therapists who have these, these fields of expertise, of asking the therapist how well versed they are in these fields of expertise, because otherwise you're just going to be, screaming into a pillow. And there are many, many therapists out there, not through any fault of their own, who this is not what they focus on. And you must find the right people. You must find the right social media pages, groups, therapists. You have to find your people, because people who have not gone through this or don't fully understand it are not going to be able to help you. They're simply not.
You said, you're the second person that I've heard this from. The other one was Dr. Peter Anderson, and who is trained in personality disorders. And he noted he couldn't send any of his patients, because he's completely filled up, but he could not send any or make any recommendations to other therapists because they're not trained. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge issue today.
It
So,
is.
yeah, so that seems to be an absolute. So listen, that's really good advice. Come back.
I would love to.
Come back. We'll expand the conversation.
Yeah, next time next time you see one of my videos that you want to talk about, just reach out. I'd love to come back on.
I love that too. I will. You know I will now.
Great.
All right, go have fun. Did you move? You said you were moving.
I haven't moved yet. I'm in the process of figuring it all out, but my sympathies to anyone who's moving or in the middle of a move, because not fun. Not fun.
It sucks. Sorry. Okay, Abby, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Be well.
Take care.
Bye-bye. There we go. So that's it for today's show. Isn't she's fascinating. She really is. She really is fascinating. I love her. Love her videos. Check them out. All right. I'm going to put the link to her TikTok below. And any other page that she has. I'm going to put the link to the book that she recommended below. And yeah, and this is, well, let me bring on again. We're going to go real quick through this. Doormat Mom No More. If you haven't gotten it, please get it. It's available on Amazon and you'll be happy that you did. And the app, please go and sign up for the app, Doormat Mom No More. It's actually available for iPhone and Android. It's free for the first 3 months. We're actually considering making it free in general, but it's less than $5 for any month after the first 3 months. At the moment, we may change that. So go sign up, and you won't get charged until 3 months are up, and you say you want to get charged. So you have complete control. Okay, here we go. Now we're done. Thank you so much for joining me. Had a lot of fun this episode and learned a lot too. Hopefully you did too. And next week, I know we have another wonderful guest. So come back around for that. All right. And in the meantime, have a great weekend. And for those of you in the Northeast, get ready for 15 inches of snow.